maar ook met die grootste dankbaarheid. Dankie dat ons vandag die 100-jarige bestaan van die AB kan gedenk. 'n Klein begin het 'n stroom geword wat na elke uithoek van ons land gevloei het en daar 'n verskil gemaak het. Dankie dat dit 'n rigtingwyser was wat deur baie leiers en denkers in die AB, deur studiestukke en samesprekings en onderhandelings op hoë vlak, wat vir ons in moeilike tye oor baie jare die pad laat soek het vir Suid-Afrika, met al sy mense in 'n regverdige en veilige bestel. Here, ons weet dit was soms 'n opdraande pad en dikwels 'n kronkelpad, maar op elke tree van die pad was U by ons. En waar ons gefaal het, dikwels op sleeptou geneem is en nie altyd getrou was aan ons roeping nie, bely ons dit ook vanaand met pyn in ons hart. Vergewe ons, Here, vir elke afdraaipad wat ons gedink het dis die regte pad, maar wat uiteindelik 'n doodlooppad was. Ons wil net op U pad bly, aan U gehoorsaam wees en saam met elke inwoner van hierdie land bou aan 'n hoopvolle toekoms. Daarom bid ons vir ons land en sy mense, vir ons leiers op elke terrein, vir wysheid en insig, vir reg en geregtigheid, vir 'n gesonde en gelukkige samelewing, vir vryheid, veiligheid, verantwoordelikheid, vrede en voorspoed. Ons bid vir ons president en sy groot werk om hierdie land weer op te bou. Geef vir hom die krag en die gesondheid, maar ook die wysheid van Salomo en die geduld van Job om dit te doen. Ons bid vir ons nasionale raad, ons voorsitter en bestuurslede, vir ons hoofsekretaris en sy kantoor, vir elke afdeling en lid van die AB en vir die nuwe visie en rol wat ons nog verder in hierdie land moet speel, waar grense oorgesteek sal word, waar bande gebind moet word, waar nuwe verhoudings gekweek moet word en waar 'n nuwe toekoms gebou moet word. Here, gee vir ons genade, nie om te breek nie, maar om te bou, nie om te swyg nie, maar om te praat, nie om te vrees nie, maar om te bid, nie om te twyfel nie, maar om te glo, nie om tou op te gooi nie, maar die tou te vat, om 'n touleier te wees. Gee vir ons hoop, om die onsienlike te sien en die onmoontlike te verwag. Ons staan vanaand in die ligkring van U genade en ons bid dat U seën op ons sal reën en dat U goedheid ons sal benat. Ons bid dit in diepe afhanklikheid in die naam van Hom, ons Here, ons God en ons Koning, Jesus Christus. Amen.
Erekode van die Afrikanerbond. Ons bevestig opnuut dat lidmaatskap van die Afrikanerbond beteken om die goeie in mekaar te soek, te waardeer en uit te bou, om individueel en gesamentlik in geestverbandskap ons God gegewe talente diensbaar te maak aan die saak waarin ons glo. Om te dien, nie om gedien te word nie. Om te gee, nie om te ontvang nie. Om sonder najaging van persoonlike voordeel ons te beywer vir die verwesenliking van ons volksideaal. Om altyd bereid te wees om die inisiatief in ons volksstryd te neem en nie op ander te wag om dit te doen nie. Om self dissipline toe te pas. Om lojaal en getrou te wees en altyd 'n hoë premie op integriteit te plaas. Om in mekaar se vreugde en leed te deel. Om in die lotsbestuuring van die drie-enige God oor die Afrikaner volk te glo. Om te besef dat ons geroepe is om elke dag met blymoedigheid en vertroue in sy diens te staan. Laat ons onsself gereeld in hierdie beeld spieël en dan die hand in eie boesem steek. Mag God ons hierin help.
Klank kry. Ek wil vra dat ons weer opstaan. Ons gaan die nasionale lied nou sing.
Così si caleli Africa, manu pagani su pondolvaio, niswani mitana zoyetu, così si calela tina lusabolaio, morena bola.
Dames en here, wat 'n groot voorreg om op so 'n manier en so mooi vanaand te kan begin. Geagte president, dit is vir ons 'n geweldige groot voorreg dat u vanaand hier is. Baie, baie hartlik welkom. En ek wil terselfdertyd Mr. President, siyayazi ikesha yakho iqinile kakhulu. Siyayazi iqinile. Kodwa siyabulela. Namhlanje ulapho inhliziyo ye-Afrikaner. I-Afrikanerbond yayivula inhliziyo namhlanje. Isitshixo ipha kuwe. Siyacela ivule, sifuna ungene. Dames en here, ek wil net ook ons vorige voorsitters net baie hartlik welkom heet. Ons is bevoorreg om vanaand 3 van ons vorige voorsitters, Dion van Garderen, professor P.W en vir Pieter Forster te hê. Baie dankie dat u hier is. Dankie dat u 'n oogie oor my ook hou. Ek besef dat u groot voetspore gelaat het wat ek moet volstaan. Dankie vir die dissipline wat u kort uitoefen oor my. Baie dankie en baie hartlik welkom. Dames en here, ons het ook 'n paar van ons ontvangers van oorkondes hier vanaand. Dis ons spesiale gaste. Ek wil graag vir professor Herman Gilumee, die geskiedkundige, Dave Stewart van die F.W. de Klerk Stichting, Karel Trigard, wat vir ons die net nou voortgegaan het, toe ons die kode gelees het, en dan ook vir Karel Stander, ook besonder welkom heet. Dames en here, ons het ook 'n paar organisasies vanaand hier, en verteenwoordigers van hulle. Ons het die voorsitter van die Afrikaanse Taalraad, ons het die voorsitter van die FAK hierso, ons het vir die hoofleier van die voortrekkers, verteenwoordigers van die SA Akademie vir Wetenskap en Kuns, Dr. Sias Mostert, dan het ons ook verteenwoordigers van die Joodse Raad hier. I welcome the people from the Jewish board. They are Rahil Kopping and Leo Boysken. A special word of welcome also to you. Ons het ook vanaand hier vir die minister van sport, meneer Gert Oosthuizen. Meneer Oosthuizen moet ook vanaand vroeër gaan. Hy het beloof hy gaan 'n paar rugbyspelers in Frankryk vir ons probeer terugbring vanaand. En dan ook die parlementêre verteenwoordiger van die president, Gerard Koornhof. Gerard, dis vir ons 'n groot voorreg om jou hier vanaand welkom te heet. Ons het vir Renier Skuman, hy is van die Kommissie vir die Bevordering van Taal, Kultuur en Geloofsregte. Renier, ook aan jou baie hartlik welkom. Is vir my altyd lekker as ek ook die ryk Skumans hier so het. Net om te wys, daar is daarom ook van hulle. We also have a few political leaders here tonight. We've got Mr. Musi Maimane from the DA. We've got Masua Lokota from COPE. And Dr. Pieter Groenewald van die Vryheidsfront. Aan julle baie, baie hartlik welkom. Dames en here, en dan moet jy my net verskoon. Ek het 'n spesiale woord van verskoning vir president F.W. de Klerk, wat absoluut gebrand het om vanaand hier te wees, en hy het gevra ons moet asseblief sy verskoning aanteken. Hy dink aan ons vanaand. En dan het ons ook vir prins Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Hy sou vanaand hier gewees het, tot laat vanmiddag het hy vir ons laat weet, dat hy dit ongelukkig nie kan maak nie. Dit sou baie lekker gewees het om hom ook hier te hê. Hy het vir ons 'n baie mooi briefie geskrywe, wat hy graag wil hê ons moet voorhou, en dit is maar net die rede hoekom hy vanaand nie hier kan wees nie. Maar dan het hy ons vir ons 'n tweede aanhangsel bygesit. En ek wil net vir u 3 paragrawe daarvan lees, van prins Buthelezi. My eie identiteit as lid van die Zulu nasie het my nog altyd geleer om ander kulture ook te respekteer. Ek weet hoe diep julle tradisie, julle kultuur en taal ag, en hoe hierdie waardes julle identiteit vorm. Ek glo dat hierdie gevoel van identiteit mag is, nie net vir die Afrikaner nasie nie, maar vir die hele Suid-Afrikaanse nasie as 'n geheel. Ek het groot bewondering vir die Afrikanerbond se totale toewyding en bydra tot Suid-Afrika se sukses. Met ongelooflike wysheid het julle besef dat die oorlewing van een staat maak op die oorlewing van almal as 'n geheel. Ek eer julle vir julle patriotisme. Dis waar dat ons land 'n tuiste is wat ons almal deel. Ons verlede is hier. Ons nou is hier en ons toekoms is hier in die land. Dis hoekom dit dan belangrik is dat ons hande sal vat en saam sal oplossings vind vir die toekoms. Die Afrikaner nasie het nog altyd probleme getakel met toewyding wat geen gelyke het nie. En dan ook ons groot dank ook aan prins Buthelezi vir hierdie mooi woorde. Dames en here, die Afrikanerbond het 2 dae gelede sy eerste 100 jaar bereik. Ons is nou deel van 'n uitgeleese spesie van persone of organisasies wat 100 jaar oud is. Die bekendste is die ANC wat verjaar 106 jaar oud is. Ons is 'n groot bevoorreg om daardie prestasie ook nou te deel, nou dat ons ook in die 100de is. Ek wil net graag ook daarom sê dat daar baie ander organisasies is wat ook 100 jaar oud is. Die nasionale pers, Sanlam, Santam, die burger, huisgenoot en so meer. Maar dan wil ek veral sê, dat daar 'n individu, 'n persoon is, wat ook hierdie jare 100 jaar oud is. En dit is meneer Nelson Mandela. Dit sou vir ons so groot voorreg gewees het, as hy ook vanaand hier kon teenwoordig wees. Ek is doodseker, hy sou so tuis gevoel het. If we had the privilege of had Mr. Mandela here, also on his 100th birthday, he would be so at home. He would enjoy the evening. And therefore, I also invite you to enjoy the evening as if Mr. Mandela would have been here as well, and we honor him for that. Those who does not study history are doomed to repeat it. Those who do study sometimes helplessly stand by and see how other people repeat the mistakes that they've made. And I think from the Afrikanerbond, that's what we can say. We don't want mistakes to be repeated. The Afrikanerbond doesn't want the mistakes of the past to repeat themselves. En dan sê ek vir die broers van die Afrikanerbond, ons is 100 jaar oud. Ons is gestig die 5de Junie 1918 in Melvin, in Marathonweg nommer 32. Hierdie eerste 100 jaar was maar net 'n klein treetjie. Dis die tweede 100 jaar wat ons met hernieude krag en met hernieude ywer moet voortsit. En wat vir my baie inspirerend is dat hierdie organisasie, die Afrikanerbond, van sy 100 jaar, het hy 40 tot 50 jaar ook gearbei om te kyk of ons verkeerde besluite wat in die verlede geneem is, kan regstel. Sedert die 1970s het die Afrikanerbond 'n aktiewe rol gespeel om die sisteem van apartheid af te takel. Ek het vandag weer met 'n goeie vriend Johan Mostert gepraat, wat besoek gehad het van Pieter de Lange, een van ons vorige voorsitters, waar hy 'n aangename gesprek met meneer Mbeki gehad het. En wat meneer Mbeki onomwonde gesê het, was dit nie vir 'n toevallige ontmoeting wat hy en Pieter de Lange op 'n vlug gehad het na Europa toe nie, dan het hy nie met soveel moed in die toekoms en die onderhandelinge begin nie. En meneer Mbeki het gesê dat die Afrikanerbond kry nooit genoeg eer en erkenning vir wat hulle gedoen het nie. President Ramaphosa, you are in the heart of the Afrikanerdom tonight. We are really privileged that you have here. And Mr. President, we want to kalela. Ingalo zakho sizaziphakamisa. Usikalela uzawuqala ngoku uthi Tuma Mina. Tuma Mina. It's so beautiful. Send me. He is here because he sent. Mr. President, siyafuna ukuqalela. Thina asinawuhlala emthunzini. Sithi Tuma wena. Asinayenza loo nto. Siyaphakamisa izandla zakho. Sithi Tuma thina sonke. Sizakuncedisa sonke. Nkosi kakhulu. Dames en here, ek wil nie Dames en here, ek het julle eintlik net verbind om vir die president te sê, hoewel hy so hard en duidelik vir ons gesê het, stuur vir hom. Het ek gesê, ons gaan nie in die skaduwee van hierdie akkerbome hier by Rhebokskloof sit en sê, stuur hom nie. Ek het u nou almal verbind tot 'n onderneming aan die president, wat ek gesê het, stuur ons almal saam, ons sal sy hande hoog hou. 100 jaar in 'n nuwe organisasie. 100 jaar in 'n nuwe organisasie gaan baie vinnig verby. Jy weet, hierdie organisasie het die Anglo-Boereoorlog oorleef. Hierdie organisasie het die nasleep van die rebellie oorleef. Ons het die armblanke vraagstuk oorleef. En ons het apartheid oorleef. En dit is my groot versoek vanaand. Ons is nie onverskillig oor die wandade wat plaasgevind het in die Anglo-Boereoorlog, in die rebellie en gedurende apartheid nie. Ons is nie onsympatiek nie, ons is geweldig simpatiek. Maar dames en here, na 25 jaar is daar 'n gevoel by my dat ons nie kan stilstaan daarby nie. Ons moet die volgende tree gee. Mr. President, we cannot, after 22, nearly 25 years, any longer move around in the shades of grey. We have to move back after 25 years to the constitution that we have established. This grey zone is causing too much problems. We really want to call on moving closer to the constitution and not moving away from the constitution. As Afrikanerbond, we want to assure you tonight, we are committed to dialogue. We've been known for that for a very long time, and we want to reassure you, dialogue is very high on our priority list. And at any stage, if you ever want to speak to the heart of the Afrikaner, please just call on us and we will do that. In 1918, toe die Afrikanerbond gestig is, het ons hierdie pragtige boodskap van wees sterk. Wees sterk, dit is so mooi. Mr. President, we always said wees sterk. And I don't know if it's coincidence, but wees sterk in Xhosa is very close to Amandla. And unknowingly, for these 100 years, we actually had the same message. Wees sterk, Amandla. Mr. President, when you go to Europe, the President assured us this evening that he's going to see the G7 in Europe. But he had to change it to the G8. He's going to Canada tomorrow to meet the other 7 of the G8. The number 1 of the G8 is here tonight. That's the beginning of his trip. Mr. President, Mr. President, we are not going to knock on the door of Donald Trump or Mr. Dutton. We are not going to America or Australia. We are going back to Moses, and we are going back to Dr. Albert Lutuli. And we say, we don't want our people to go. Don't let my people go. We want our people to stay in this country. And you are our president. We honor you for that. We are so privileged that you are here tonight. And I want to introduce you to a most fantastic audience. They are not colonials of a special kind. Of most of them, but I think all of them, none of them have stolen the land. None of them are racists. None of them take part in hate speech. I can stand in for each and every one here tonight. And that's why I'm so privileged to hand you over to this audience. En dames en here, is my 'n groot voorreg om die president van die Republiek van Suid-Afrika die geleentheid te gee om met die hart van die Afrikaner te praat vanaand hier. Dit is vir ons 'n geweldige groot voorreg. En ek wil graag hê die president moet weet dat die mense wat hier is vanaand is vry mense, is vry. Ons is vry van marxisme, ons is vry van sosialisme, ons is vry van apartheid, ons is vry van die nasionale demokratiese revolusie, ons is vry van enige ideologie, ons is vry in Christus, en ons is net gebonde aan die beginsels van die Christendom. Mr. President, these are free people. You are free to talk to them, and we really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. Baie dankie. Ek is baie bly om hier te wees. Hier by die G1. Voorsitter van die Afrikanerbond, meneer Jaco Schoeman, asook vorige voorsitters wat hier is, hoofsekretaris van die Afrikanerbond, meneer Jan Bosman, lede van die Nasionale Raad, lede van die Afrikanerbond, verteenwoordigers wat hier is van verskeie organisasies, en my broers, ledes van politieke partye, Musi Maimane, Musiwa Lekota en meneer Groenewald. En ook lede van die parlement van Suid-Afrika. En ook ontvangers van spesiale toekennings en dames en here. It is for me a great pleasure to be amongst you as you celebrate your 100 years of existence. This is a moment of great significance indeed, which we as South Africans must acknowledge and appreciate. 2018 is an important year in the life of our country in more ways than one. It is a year in which we commemorate a number of key historical events that have shaped the future of our country. And it is good for us as South Africans to commemorate significant events that have taken place in the past. And from these commemorations, we are able to learn. There are great learnings about what happened in the past and how that past evolved, but it also helps to inform the present and also plot out the future. As you celebrate your 100 years of existence, I think it is important for us to look at your 100 years and ask ourselves, what is it that we can learn from your 100 years of existence? And there's quite a bit that we can learn. But what is it that we can avoid from the years of your organization's existence? So it is a seminal moment for all of us as South Africans. However, there are quite a number of other interesting events that took place many years ago, whose significance we should also seek to remember, if not celebrate. One obscure event that we should remember as a nation is something that happened 210 years ago, when slaves in our land rebelled in 1808 here in the Cape. And these slaves were rebelling because they were seeking a free state and freedom for all slaves. Now there's something quite significant about this, because this rebellion, which was squashed obviously by the colonial authorities, was one of the earliest instances of organized multiracial resistance to tyranny and injustice in South Africa. Multiracial. This year is also 105 years since the 1913 Land Act and 95 years since the Native Urban Areas Act, two pieces of legislation that were central to the deprivation of black South Africans of their land, their assets, and their livelihoods. and the effects of these laws are still being felt today. It is important that we must remember some of these events that have taken place in our past, so that we must be able to say, like Mandela, and I'll read it in a while, never again. As the Brotherhood of the Broederbond, was being formed 100 years ago, the Bantu Women's League, a forerunner of the ANC Women's League, was the first organization in the whole country that decided to take up the struggle for the women of South Africa. It is also 75 years since the adoption of what came to be known as the African Claims, a South African document that was adopted just after the war, which set out the demands of black South Africans for equal rights and self-determination. This seminal document was a precursor to the Freedom Charter and the ANC's constitutional guidelines, and finally, that found its way into our constitution today. For nearly 50 years, the Afrikaner Broederbond, now today the Afrikaner Bond, stood at the center of the political and economic life of South Africa. You say this is the heart of Afrikanerdom, but your organization in its existence was the epicenter, the real center of the economic life and the political life of our country. It was a very powerful organization. It was a movement that was born out of the subjugation of the Afrikaner people by the British, the pain and the resentment caused by the destruction of Boer farms and the imprisonment and incarceration in concentration camps of Boer women and children. And in the course of those incarcerations in the concentration camps, a number of black people also died. But your organization had to go through that type of subjugation, and your people. And you were made to suffer deeply. And it was as a response to this that your organization was born. It was born out of the suppression of Afrikaans as a language and the frustration of the economic and political aspirations of the citizens of the former Boer republics. Yet it is one of the greatest tragedies in our country, in the 20th century that is, that in pursuing the rights and the freedoms that all peoples yearn for and deserve, the Afrikaner Broederbond would inevitably deny the majority of South Africans these very same rights and freedoms. To me, that represented a deep contradiction. But these are the lessons that we must learn so that history never ever repeats itself. It is a tragedy that the desire of the Afrikaner people for self-determination, the preservation of their language, and the culture and affirmation of their own identity as a people should have formed the basis for the perpetuation of the discriminatory practices of the colonial era. This is a historic reality that we must acknowledge, and it is also a historic reality that we must reflect on, which I am pleased to know that you are already reflecting on. We reflect better on this history by remembering Madiba's futuristic hope when he said, "Never, never, never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. We cannot not deny our history, for it lives on right up till now. We cannot change our divided past, but we can together shape our common future, where we want to go. Today, the Afrikanerbond is an organization that has changed a lot, and that has changed for the better. It is not only known by a different name, but its credo, which you read out this evening, reflects a desire to build an inclusive, just, and truly democratic society. And let me tell you that when the credo was read out here, I was filled with great admiration, because there aren't many organizations where at the beginning of important meetings, they stand out and read the credo, the ethos, the principles, the values that bind the membership together. There aren't many such organizations. So I applaud you. I really honor you for that, because that makes everyone remember what the real heart and the credo of the organization is. So you can give yourself a wonderful round of applause for that. Now, you now reflect a determination to forge an Afrikaner identity that is rooted in a commitment to enhance the quality of life and human dignity of all South Africans. There is a great deal of symbolism in the celebration of this centenary. Little more than a month after the Afrikaner Broederbond was formed in June 1918, at a home in Malvern, as you said, in Johannesburg, a son was born to a chief of the Abatembu in the tiny village of Mvezo. This young boy was called Nelson Rholihlahla Mandela. Well, the name Nelson he only got later when he got to school, when the teacher could not pronounce his name Rholihlahla. And he would become the first president of the Republic of South Africa, a president who had never been a member of the Broederbond. So, sorry, Nelson Mandela was not your member. We have dedicated this year to the celebration of the centenary of his birth and to the celebration of the centenary of Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, another giant of the struggle for freedom and democracy in our country. Their lives, the values for which they stood and the freedoms for which they fought, stood in sharp contrast to the goals and ethos of the then Broederbond. They sought to build a society founded on the fundamental principle contained in the Freedom Charter that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. This was the antithesis of the apartheid policies championed by the Broederbond from at least the 1930s and implemented with great zeal after the National Party came to power in 1948. It was a government led by prominent members of the Broederbond who imprisoned Nelson Mandela and who banned and detained and harassed Albertina Sisulu. It was against a government led by members of the Broederbond that Nelson Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, and many others mobilized a powerful movement of defiance and resistance, just as your forebears did against British oppression. It is therefore significant that it was the same Broederbond that began in the 1980s to cast doubt on the sustainability and even the morality of the system of apartheid. It was the same Broederbond that was behind a process of reform in the National Party and in sections of white society that contributed to the release of Nelson Mandela, the unbanning of the liberation movements, and the negotiated transition to democracy. It was the same Broederbond that would reconcile itself to the new democratic dispensation and would embrace the values and principles contained in our new constitution. The constitution that you so articulately said, we want to stick by this constitution. And the fact that we mark the centenary of the Afrikanerbond in the same year as we celebrate the centenary of the births of Mandela and Sisulu is important not only in understanding our past. It is just as important, perhaps, even more so, for understanding our future and being able to look through the looking glass and see this future from where we are. And this time to do it together, not from different viewpoints. Nelson Mandela and Albertina Sisulu were among the most consistent proponents of a united, non-racial, non-sexist society in which all would have equal rights and opportunities. They both believed deeply that Afrikaners were an essential and integral part of the South African nation. They believed that South Africa belonged to all who lived in it equally, and none should be discriminated against on the basis of their language, on the basis of their faith, their culture, their creed, or origin. That is the South Africa that all of us together have a responsibility to build. As you correctly say, tumatina, it basically means that we have, therefore, a responsibility to build this South Africa from the ashes of our past and make sure that it works. We owe it to the memory of Mandela to forge a new nation that is united in its diversity. More importantly, we owe it to our children to forge a nation in which all may have security, all may have shelter and comfort, and where all may enjoy an improving quality of life. If we are to achieve this, we need to heed the injunction in our Constitution, not only to recognize the injustices of the past, but also to work together to redress those injustices. This means that we must strive together to realize the demand that the people shall share also in the country's wealth. It is this demand that stands at the center of the economic policy of every administration since 1994, to lift the majority of South Africans out of poverty by building an inclusive economy that can give them a better life. It informs our focus on transformation, changing patterns of ownership, management, and control to benefit all South Africans, but especially those who are most at the bottom, Black South Africans, and especially women. It informs our focus on education and skills development, on employment equity and preferential procurement. It lies behind our determination as this government to undertake an ambitious investment drive to stimulate growth in the productive sectors of our economy. Part of these investment drives are concrete steps to remove all the impediments and everything that holds our economy back from growing. As the first quarter GDP figures indicate, there is a pressing need to push ahead, to push forward with greater urgency to resolve policy issues in key industries like mining and telecommunications, to promote industrialization more intensively and to advance productive land reform. And I'm glad that my colleagues from Parliament are here in the form of Musi Maimani, Ntatele Kota, and Meneer Groenewald. Because as opposition parties in Parliament, correctly so, they keep on raising issues that they would like to see us address. And we listen, we hear them, and together we want to arrive at a point where we will be able to say, let us all work together to move South Africa forward. We are hard at work to deepen our efforts to stabilize state-owned enterprises and to set them on a path of recovery, to reduce the cost of doing business in our country, and to maintain our investment in economic and social infrastructure. Hierdie is 'n inisiatief waarvan die Afrikanerbond 'n integrale deel moet wees. Die Afrikanerbond kan 'n bydrae maak tot die groei en die transformasie van ons ekonomie. One of the singular achievements of the Broederbond, the then Broederbond, was the economic empowerment of the Afrikaner. The Broederbond drove the empowerment of the Afrikaner with great skill, with great precision, and made sure that the Afrikaners who were looked down upon by the English in our country were properly empowered. The Broederbond was the engine behind that empowerment process. While this contributed in no small measure to the highly unequal distribution of wealth, distribution of skills and opportunity in our society, the Broederbond was responsible for unleashing the economic potential of the Afrikaner people. Now, as we work to build an inclusive society, we look to the Afrikanerbond to play its part in unleashing the economic potential of all the people of our country. Because the period that we went through in our country empowered the Afrikaner people. It empowered them, it gave them skills, it gave them the wherewithal to play in the economy of our country. And now we say, as you say tonight, to Martina, we're saying, yes, those skills, that knowledge, that experience must now be used to empower all the people of our country. Because you were placed in a very special place by the system that prevailed at the time, that enabled you as the Afrikaners to be well positioned, and we say we need to turn that around and make all that you have learned, what you have gathered, available to the people of South Africa as a whole. It should do so informed by a determination to correct the injustices of the past, but based also on an understanding that a stable, prosperous, and free South Africa is dependent on a more equal distribution of economic and social resources. It should be based on an understanding that the future of the Afrikaner is intricately linked to the prosperity and the fulfillment of the people of South Africa as a whole. Hierdie is 'n realiteit wat die Afrikanerbond lank reeds erken en ons vertroue dat dit sy programme en aksies in die toekoms sal reg. Hierdie is 'n vertrekpunt wat ons benadering tot onderwys moet toelig. As a democratic state, we inherited a severely unequal education system, which directed the bulk of resources towards white institutions. As we know, this had a devastating effect on the social and economic capabilities of generations of black South Africans, a deficiency that continues to severely limit the development of our economy and the transformation of our society. It was this, therefore, imperative that the democratic government should take urgent and far-reaching measures to establish an education system that benefits all South Africans equally. Where we had 13 departments of education in one country, the democratic government had to establish one. And in establishing one, it had to mesh them all together. Different cultures, different experiences, different everything. We have made great progress in a number of endeavors that affect our lives as South Africans. But we will be the first to admit that we still have much further to go. We will be the first to admit that there are still quite a number of shortcomings, a number of gaps, a number of misses, and we still need to work harder to make sure that we move this vehicle forward. As we have undertaken this task, we have had to confront the many impediments to equal access to education, including issues of poverty, distance, social norms, and language. We have had to confront the reality that many of the better resourced public schools and around a quarter of our universities were Afrikaans medium institutions, serving a small population in our country, against a sea of those who wanted access, who wanted to come in and also learn. This proved to be a barrier to access, and had steps not been taken to change some of the policies, including language, at many such institutions, this would have undermined our commitment to equal access to educational opportunities. This process, as it has unfolded over the last 24 years, has caused, yes, anxiety and even dissent in some sections of the Afrikaans community. We know that this is a matter that concerns the Afrikanerbond as well. It is a concern that is to be found in many other areas where we have taken steps to end white privilege and correct past injustices, whether it be in employment, as regards employment equity, black economic empowerment, and preferential procurement. We have a responsibility as a society, yes, to address these concerns. If we do not engage on these matters and seek to find one another through the dialogue that you spoke about, we will undermine the efforts to build a united society in which all of us should feel at home. The concerns about anything we do in our country will always be there. But the important thing is to do what Nelson Mandela taught us well, to sit down and seek consensus through dialogue. It was this that unleashed the democratic processes that we have today. Because as he was in prison, and his warders and his handlers kept coming to him, and they were saying, Mr. Mandela, you see the front pages of the newspapers, this and this is happening. And he kept saying, the only answer to all that's happening in our country is for the government and the ANC to sit down together and negotiate an end to this unjust system. And that is what defined Nelson Mandela's approach. And these are the lessons that we must also learn as we commemorate his 100 years, his centenary. As South Africa was preparing for its first democratic election in 1994, former Constitutional Court Judge Albie Sachs wrote a paper on affirmative action and the new constitution. He said, the question is not whether or not to have affirmative action. Have it we must, and in a deep and meaningful way. If well handled, affirmative action will help bind the nation together and produce benefits for everyone. If badly managed, it will simply redistribute resentment, damage the economy, and destroy social peace. If not undertaken at all, the country will remain backward and divided at its heart. As we grapple with the complexity and challenges of transformation, we should remain guided by this sentiment, which gives us options, and we should choose the best option that can take our country forward. We remain committed to affirmative action that is meaningful and improves the lives of all our people. We remain committed in its implementation to dialogue, consultation, and inclusiveness. This is the same approach we are taking to the resolution of the land question. The ANC at its 54th conference took a resolution to accelerate the process of land reform. Among the measures that it said government should use, where appropriate, is the expropriation of land without compensation. This has generated significant debate and much interest in the question of land in South Africa. The debates have been happening in Parliament. We now have 140,000 and more submissions that have been made on this very question. Let me remind you that when we drafted our constitution, we had more than 1 million submissions by all South Africans, various organizations, individuals, you name it. Everybody took the opportunity to submit proposals for the finalization of our democracy, or the ushering in of our democracy. And in the end, people focused on a number of issues, but the issues that we differed on as we were moving towards our destined date with our democracy was the question of land, the question of language, the right to strike, and one other. But South Africans, in their hundreds of thousands, brought through submissions. And those submissions guided us. They guided us as we shepherded this process. It was delicate, it was dangerous, it was fraught with a lot of challenges and problems. But armed with the Nelson Mandela way of doing things, with him at the head guiding the process, working with P.W Klerk, we were able, and other leaders of various political parties, we were able to find one another, to bring an end to the system of apartheid. What many people in the world regarded as the most intractable problem that has ever had to be faced by leaders in the world. But we were able, through skill, through ability, yes, through mobilization, through articulation of views, we were able to find answers and find one another. The same thing is now happening with the land question. Our people, through various platforms, are talking about it and are putting forward views so that we can find solutions for the land question. This provides us with an opportunity to move together with purpose and determination to address one of the most contentious issues in our country's history. In approaching this issue, we are guided by the Freedom Charter, which said, "The land shall be shared amongst those who work it." I want to emphasize this point, that the land shall be shared. The land should never have been and should not be reserved for one group of South Africans. It should never have been done like that. Our aim must be to ensure that all those who work the land and all those who want to work the land should be equally able to have land, because land is an important economic resource, as we have seen in our own history. By the same measure, all those who need land, whether to build a house, to run a business, should be equally able to have title to land in well-located parts of our towns and cities. And this will also help us to repair the spatial architecture that was put in during the apartheid years, where black people, who obviously were the poorest in society, were pushed further and further away from where they worked and from economic centers. So the new approach should be, we should repair that and make sure that, yes, they move closer and closer to places of work. By restricting the ownership and use of land to a small minority over many decades, the apartheid government made sure that the country would never realize the full potential of this very, very valuable resource. It is our responsibility, all of us working together, to unlock the economic value of the land. It is our collective responsibility to deal with and reduce poverty and inequality. We also need to acknowledge that the taking of land and removal of the majority of South Africans from their land was the source of poverty and the inequality that we see. We do so by returning land that was forcibly taken from Africans, colours, and Indian South Africans. We do so by securing the rights of labor tenants to the land that they have occupied for generations. We do so by providing land close to urban centers, and we also do so by providing emerging farmers with finance, training, and support. And we call on all South Africans, including the members of the Afrikanerbond, to see the acceleration of land reform not as a threat, but as an opportunity. If we approach this as an opportunity, like we did when we ended apartheid, as we entered the negotiations, we did not see it as a threat. I remember very well when P.W Klerk led the white community, even through a referendum, and said, let us accept this new period that is coming, see it as an opportunity to be part of the broader South African population. And he led the white community in that and was stressing that this gives us, as Afrikaners, an opportunity to be able to have a better life. And similarly, I am saying on this issue of land, rather than see it as a threat, running to various foreign capitals, raising the alarm bells, let us see it as an opportunity of being able to sit down with fellow South Africans and dialogue, so that we find solutions that can work, solutions that can take our country forward. So tonight, I want to say to all of you as the Afrikanerbond members, let us not see the issue of land as a reason to pack and go. Let us not see the issue of land as reason to raise alarm bells. Let us see it as a great opportunity. That yes, there was a gross injustice that was done in the past. And that is the starting point. We need to accept that there was an injustice. But having accepted that there was an injustice, let us then say, right, let us sit down, work together, and find solutions. And keep in mind what the Freedom Charter said, that the people of our country just want to share in the wealth of the country. And they don't want to take it all for themselves. That is not the approach. It is an opportunity to build a more just, more equitable society that makes full and effective use of the resources that we have in our country, its land, its mineral wealth, its oceans, and more importantly, its people. Already we know of several established white farmers, and in this province also particularly, who have found ways of sharing the land with their farm workers, their labor tenants, and neighboring communities. They have not waited for government to arrive or to act. Many of them, out of their own volition, have said, yes, an injustice was committed in the past, let us find a way of working together, and they're finding one another. And some of the stories that we keep hearing are really heartwarming. They've taken the initiative, and with different degrees of success, have developed different models for local land reform and agricultural development. We commend their efforts and call on others to follow. And let us remember that the question is not whether or not to have land reform. Have it, we must. If we want this country to move forward, we must have land reform. And it has to be done in a deep and meaningful manner. If well handled, this issue of land, it will help to bind the nation together and produce benefits for everyone. But if badly handled, and if badly managed, it will simply redistribute resentment, damage the economy, multiply protests, destroy social peace and social cohesion. If not undertaken at all, the country will remain divided. As we mark this 100th year anniversary of the Afrikanerbond, it is inevitable that we must also reflect on the place and the role of the Afrikaner in our history and in our democracy. Afrikaners are by name and by definition Africans, and we can never run away from that. You are Africans, and we must accept that. And Afrikaners are an integral part to the South African nation as any other community that we have. Their language, their culture, their needs, and their aspirations are no less important and no more important than those of other compatriots in our country. As we reflect on the last 100 years, we must acknowledge that for millions of South Africans, the Broederbond was an instrument of misery and hardship. But as we look ahead to the next 100 years, we must be firm in our resolve that the Afrikanerbond should be an instrument of unity, it should be an instrument of progress and equality. And in fact, the Afrikanerbond must be that instrument that stands at the head, right in the leadership positions of insisting that there should be equality, there should be transformation. If there is anything that our history has taught us, it is this, that the advancement of some cannot be achieved or sustained without the advancement of all. Allow me to conclude by borrowing the words of Beyers Naudé, one of the finest South Africans ever to have been a member of the Broederbond. Speaking in the days following the death in detention of Steve Biko in 1977, Wombey reflected on Biko's message to fellow South Africans. It is appropriate to recall these words, delivered over 40 years ago, because they capture in many ways the journey of the Broederbond into the Afrikanerbond, the journey of our country from apartheid to democracy. Wombey said, "So, should you ask me what message Steve Biko's life has been for Afrikaners that we should heed today, I would say it was this: break free from the prison of your subservience to an ideology that is leading our country towards disaster and that can destroy the Afrikaners as well. Break free from the ideological system that is enslaving and suffocating your whole life. Do not seek security in weapons, in an exclusive identity, or clinging to false loyalties." He continues, "Step outside and meet black people as they offer themselves in all sincerity to you. Grab the hand of friendship that is still being extended, even at this late hour, to you as Afrikaners and as white rulers of this country, and say to them, let us plan and determine the future of this country together. Let us speak peace together in this torn, tragic, and divided South Africa." Close quotes. That was Beyers Naudé. As we honor those who have come before us, as we pay tribute to those who have lost their lives in defense of our liberty, let us heed the words of Beyers Naudé. Laat ons saam die toekoms van hierdie land beplan en bepaal. Laat ons dit saam beplan en bepaal. Laat ons saam die vrede van hierdie verskeide, tragiese, verdeelde Suid-Afrika soek. Ons is almal Afrikaners wat hierdie land saam moet bou. En ons moet hierdie Suid-Afrika bou. Ons moet saamwerk, want almal van ons het nie ander land nie. Hierdie is die enigste land wat ons almal het, Suid-Afrika. Laat ons saamwerk en hierdie land bou. Baie dankie.
Meneer die president, u weet die Afrikanerbond en die Broederbond was baie lank 'n baie groot vertroulike organisasie. Ons kan dus nie bevestig of ontken of meneer Mandela lid van die Afrikaner Broederbond was nie. Ons kan op hierdie stadium vir u sê, ek het baie krities probeer luister na u gesprek vanaand. En daar is absoluut niks in u voordrag vanaand wat u diskwalifiseer om lid van die Afrikanerbond te wees nie. Meneer president, tonight you've kicked open a door to the heart of the Afrikaner. I thank you. I found it very inspirational. It was so good to have you here. I hope this is just the beginning of many more meetings and dialogue. We accept the challenge, Mr. President, to contribute, to build, and we are already building and contributing. We've got fantastic, you referred to some of the farming initiatives, but we've also got here in the Paarl, the mentor for Nood, where we try and get young people at school of all races to get part and parcel of the principles of free economy. We want to applaud all the members of the Afrikanerbond who has thrown off the shackles of the past. And the Afrikanerbond always say, saam as Afrikaners bou ons saam aan die toekoms van Suid-Afrika. We're just a minority part, but we want to contribute to the future. Mr. President, we wish you best of luck for your overseas trip. As Afrikanerbond, we have our Bondsraad, which is the highest power of our organization, meeting tomorrow. We will obviously discuss a lot of the ideas that you've mentioned. We will also look back over the last 100 years and establish a plan for the future. But you've inspired us tonight and you've opened our minds, and we are really looking forward to our discussions the next day or two. And when you're back, I hope that you will see that the influence that you left here tonight also guided us for the next day or two. We are here in the Paarl. I would like to give you as a thanks a book of the history of the Afrikanerbond. This book is now exactly 2 days old. It was launched 2 days ago, and inside this parcel, I don't know how you're going to get it through customs. Parliament. But we also have a very good wine here, a port, which was made. We're fortunate to have the winemaker and the owner here tonight. This port came from the last vineyard closest to the Afrikaanse Taalmonument, and it shows you how close you've moved tonight to the Afrikanerbond, or to the heart of the Afrikanerbond. We hope we enjoy it, and President Sizauthanda Zela, utiko makakunede, akunika mandla, ngaupa uyazba, stikona apa sihleli emthunzini, kodwa siyathuma wena kodwa nathi uyazi nathi ungasithuma thethe nje Sipa Sonke, Nkosi kakhulu.
Goes.
Now just put the tie in there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you and
Thank you
best
so
of
much.
luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Lucien? Dames en heren, ons weet dat die president se tyd is baie moeilik. U weet dat hy direk hier vanaand vlieg Kanada toe en daarom is dit vir ons so groot voorreg dat hy wel vanaand hier teenwoordig gaan wees. En ek het onderneem namens u almal dat ons hom spesifiek in gebed sal dra vir die volgende paar dae waar hy namens ons almal intree om seker te maak dat Suid-Afrika tot sy volle potensiaal kan ontwikkel en kan blom, tot sy volle glorie toe. Ons het gepraat oor 'n paar aspekte, waarvan ons ook gepraat het oor die grondhervorming. En ek dink ons kan gerus wees dat dit met groot verantwoordelikheid gedoen word. En ek dink die ongemak wat ons gehad het, wanneer iemand van die regering praat en sê, the land must be given back to our people, dat ons nie geweet het, wie is our people nie. Of as hulle gepraat het van this land must be given, the land belongs to the people who work it. Dan het ons gedink, ons is uitgesluit. Maar ek voel vandag gemaklik. Die president aanvaar ons as Afrikaners as our people en die mense wat die grond werk. En meneer die president, ons wil vir u steun in die inisiatiewe. Ons weet dit gaan op 'n baie verantwoordelike wyse gedoen word en ons is verbind om hierdie uitdaging, wat party sê is 'n verleentheid, maar om die verleentheid te omskep in 'n groot geleentheid. Baie dankie meneer die president. Meneer die programleier, ek gee weer terug aan u. Ek weet nie wat die president se druk op hierdie stadium is nie, maar ek weet die president is op pad en meneer die president, ons wil net graag, voordat jy gaan, as jy nog 'n oombliekie het, wil ons 'n huildronk instel op die land Suid-Afrika en ons wil graag hê, jy moet met daardie kragtige boodskap vorentoe gaan. Dit is vir my 'n groot voorreg om my voorganger Pieter Forster te vra om daardie huildronk in te stel, as u die oomblik het daarvoor. Baie dankie. Dankie Pieter.
Sit. Please sit. Sit. I'm sorry to ask you to sit, Mr. President. Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here tonight in the centenary year, not only of the Afrikanerbond, but also of the birthday of the late President Nelson Rhebokskloof Mandela. Both the Afrikanerbond as well as Madiba, that's easier, played a critical role in the establishment of the Second Republic. The Afrikanerbond, by its contribution towards the formulation of the constitutional principles, and Madiba through his commitment and endeavors as the first president of our constitutional democracy. The Republican ideal of the Afrikaner developed over a period of more than 200 years. It was influenced and shaped by various historical events such as the colonization of the Cape of Good Hope by Great Britain in 1795, the Great Trek of 1836, the formation of the various Boer republics from 1795 until 1902, the fight for the recognition of Hollands and Afrikaans, the South African War, the rebellion of 1914, the First and Second World Wars, the victory of the National Party in 1948, the referendum of 5 October 1960, and the British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan's Winds of Change speech. On 31 May 1961, South Africa became a republic, and simultaneously its membership of the Commonwealth expired. It could be said that the main driver was the strive for freedom. Freedom from the yoke of colonialism and imperialism. However, freedom at the cost of others would never last. Once again, the people of South Africa realized that only they could find the solution for their challenges, and thus constituted the Convention for a Democratic South Africa, CODESA. A new day dawned upon us in 1994, when the Second Republic of South Africa was born as a sovereign democratic state. In honor of Madiba, the following quotes from his numerous speeches reflect his legacy in the Republican sense. 27 April 1994, "This is for all South Africans an unforgettable occasion. It is the realization of hopes and dreams that we have cherished over decades. The dreams of a South Africa which represents all South Africans." 9 May 1994, "We place our vision for a new constitutional order